Most people think muscle is built when you're training. It isn't. Muscle is built after training, when the body is resting, repairing, and rebuilding. And this is where almost every fitness plan gets it wrong. They train you 3, 4, 5 times a week, which means your body is constantly recovering, never fully rebuilding. 135 is different. Because when you train once a week using my unique Optimum Overload training, you overload the muscle from multiple angles in a single session, and then you stop. That single decision changes everything about how you can eat, how you recover, and how you can build muscle and burn fat at the same time. And in this episode, I'm going to show you exactly why. You see, this is where most people get it wrong. You see, people think that you're actually building muscles when you're training. That's absolutely wrong. What you're doing when you're training is you're actually damaging your muscles. And you grow your muscles when you're not training, when you're supplementing your body with the sufficient proteins, nutrients, and rest to regrow those muscles. Because the process of building muscles in the science is known as the process of hypertrophy. You see, hypertrophy is the science of making your muscles bigger rather than stronger. And in simple terms, hypertrophy is the process of overloading your muscles and then regrowing them. So you overload the muscles when you are training, which puts the muscles into a damaged state. And then you regrow the muscles after training when you give your body the sufficient rest, energy, and protein. You need to give it rest to recover, to rebuild, and then the energy you need, because it needs extra energy to make those muscles bigger. That needs fuel to do that. And then protein are the body's building blocks, is what your body uses to make those muscles bigger. Does that make sense? You see, hypertrophy was pioneered by bodybuilders. These guys you can see standing on the stage looking like monsters. And with the sport of bodybuilding, they also gave us their nutrition plan, which is famously known as the bulk and the cut. You see, you bulk to grow muscles and then you cut to show muscles. Now, why do they do the bulk? Because, as mentioned, in order to grow new muscle fibers, you need to give your body sufficient amount of carbs, energy, to create new muscle fibers. You also need to give your body carbs in order to smash your training session. So you need energy for the training session. You need energy after the training session because you need energy to recoup. And then you need the energy to grow those muscles. So you're having excess amounts of energy. Now, that excess amount of energy is going to naturally lead to you putting on fat, because you can never eat exactly the right amount of energy for the training, for the recovery, and for the growing. So you're always just going to have excess. And then when you're out of shape, you then cut to get in shape and then show those muscles you've been building all year round. Let's look at an example of a famous bodybuilder, Lee Priest. You can see to the image on the left, he's out of shape. He's got a waist, as he's showing, of around 42 inches. But he needs to have that excess energy in order to put on the muscle. Then, when he gets to competition time, he goes through, and all these bodybuilders and most of these muscle fitness gurus you see online also go through this rigorous cut where they're cutting back all that extra fat, all the extra energy, and they go through a very difficult cut to then show those muscles. Does that make sense? When I was growing up, it wasn't Lee Priest who was the standout bodybuilder. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And all the kids, the boys my age, wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, and they wanted to get that big, bulky cut physique. Now, I tried that for years and decades, but as you can see, I don't have that natural body type that gives you that big, bulky, muscular physique. But however, I still tried. And as you can see from the slide here, I started tracking everything. My weight, I used to have one of those scales that measure your body fat. And as you can see, I was tracking over multiple years to try and get that big cut physique. You can see here my Excel sheet where I was jotting down everything. I even hired a nutritionist to help me get that infamous six-pack, but to no avail. But everything changed when I started following my 135 body system, because that training, optimum overload training, once a week unlocked everything. So that training session, let's call it day one. That's when I have my training session, and I always like to train in the morning, fasted. That day and the 3 days subsequent are what I call the recovery days, because now you've put your muscles, as mentioned, into a damaged, negative state. Your body now needs the proteins and nutrients to rescue itself from that damaged state. So you're having high amounts of protein, approximately 2.2 kilogram or 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and medium amounts of carbs. Now, when I say medium amounts of carbs, it's about 15% more energy than your body normally needs to function on a day-to-day basis. That's what I'm having those first 3 days. Your muscles are damaged. They need to get rescued. You need all the nutrients rushing to the scene of the crime to rescue your muscles. Then from day 4 onwards, you're having low carb days. So you're having the same amount of protein, but your carb intake is now lower, because your muscles in those first 3 days should have got all the energy it requires to rescue and then repair those muscles. So in the subsequent 3 days, you're having less amounts of carbs because you don't need all those carbs now. And day 4 onwards is when those muscles are starting to regrow. So you're having the same amount of carbs as you had the 2 days prior. Now on day 7, you're starting to prepare for your next training session. So this is what I call the fuel stage. So here you're going to be having excess amount of carbs. These are the high carb days to funnel the glucose that turns into glycogen into your muscles to smash your next training session. So this is what people generally call your cheat day. So you can see through this process, you've got days where you're recovering the muscles. Then you've got days where you're repairing those damaged muscles. And then you have days where you're regrowing the muscles and then fueling the muscles for the next training session. So rather span this out over the course of a whole year like bodybuilders do or fitness gurus do, where they're out of shape most of the year and then only get into shape for competition time. With the 135 nutrition system, you're in shape all year round. You see, here's the part most people miss. The only reason 135 allows you to build muscle and burn fat at the same time is because of the way you train. Once weekly training using my Optimum Overload training creates a stimulus that is intense enough to force growth, complete enough to overload the muscle fully, and rare enough that the body needs at least 7 days to recover. That recovery window is the unlock. It means you can have muscle building days and fat burning days at the same time in the same week, instead of needing an entire year of bulking and cutting. Traditional programs can't do this because they need carbs constantly just to keep you training. 135 doesn't. So instead of asking how many calories should I eat, I asked a better question. How do I structure food so it naturally matches recovery? That's where the 135 plate comes in. No tracking, no weighing, just visual structure that adapts to where you are in the recovery cycle. So let's have a look at that plate structure. You have your medium day carb days and your low carb days. On your medium carb days, it's so simple. You're dividing the plate as seen here. You've got your fibrous carbs in the green, and you've got your protein taken about from 12 o'clock to about 5 o'clock. And then from about 7 o'clock up to 12 o'clock, you've got your carbs. So you're having those extra amounts of carbs and your good amount of protein to help you fuel that regrowth. Then on your low carb days, what you're doing is you're cutting back the amount of carbs. So your carbs now become a quarter of the plate, and your fibrous carbs take up the remaining amount. So have a look at the slide next. So super simple. This is how I like to do it. I always like to start my meal with a bowl of salad, and then you can see my plate structure. A quarter of the plate is those carbs, which complex carbs. It's got a bit of fiber in there as well to slow down the digestion process. And then you've got protein on the plate. So super simple. No calorie counting, a simple visual structure of the plate. When I tell people you can get into the shape of your life training only once a week for 35 minutes, they either think they've heard me wrong. I'm sure you must have said once a day for 35 minutes, or they think I'm lying and they just don't believe it possible. Now, here's the thing that's going to really blow your mind. I'm now training once a fortnight, not once a week, once a fortnight, and getting better results than when I used to train once a week, better results than when I used to train twice a week, better results when I used to train 3 times a week, and even far better results than when I used to train 5 days a week. So not only me, some of my other clients are also on this 2-week training split, and it just simply changes the game. So let me show you how this 2-week split works. Why would you go into a 2-week split? The reason is because as you improve in your training, as you're able to put your body under more stress and those muscles under extra stress, the muscles now need longer to recover. Does that make sense? And that longer to recover means that your training doesn't increase, it actually decreases. And that unlocks a whole world of opportunity. And let me show you in this slide. So as you can see in this slide, you've got your training day on day 1 going up to a 14-day cycle. So what you have in your training day, like the 7-day split, is you're having those medium amounts of carbs for 4 days. And then the subsequent 4 days, from days 5 to 8, you're having lower carbs. Why are you having lower carbs? You're having lower carbs because now you don't need that extra energy that you've already funneled into those muscles. So you start to cut back. And then the 4 days afterwards, you're having minimum amount of carbs, trace carbs. It's on a keto diet, and then you're increasing your fat import. Why are you doing that? So now you want to go into a more intense fat burning process. You're still having high amounts of protein, so you're still going through that muscle growth phase because your muscles have got the glycogen it needs to create those bigger muscle fibers. You're now, if you like, pulling back the reins and trying to get the body to, at the same time as building muscle, cut in fat. So then you're having those high fat days, no carb days, and high protein days for the subsequent 4 days. And because now you're going into a more intense training session because you're upping the intensity, those cheat days are spread out over 2 days to fuel your muscles for that smashing session you're going to have back on day 1 again. It's a beautiful 4-day cycle where you're eating all the types of foods that you think that you couldn't eat, but you're eating it at the right amount at the right time. So just to recap, you've got those first 4 days, which are your recovery days. The next 4 days are your repair days and your fat reduce days. So you're trying to rein back that extra energy where you might have put on an extra amount of fat. And then you're going to a more intense fat burning process, and you're going through at the same time a muscle growth phase. And then the final 2 days are those refuel days to prepare the body and prepare the muscle for another killer training session. And what we're doing here is actually we're trying to manipulate insulin, because insulin tells your body either to store energy or burn energy. So what we're trying to do through this 2-week process is to get the body to increase its insulin at the beginning, as you can see here, higher insulin at the beginning, because that's where we want the muscles to grow. So we need those extra insulin to funnel the energy into the muscles. And then we want to bring the insulin level down, because if the insulin level stays high, we can't go into a fat burning process. And then on the final 2 days, we want the insulin to spike again to get that fuel to funnel into the muscles again. So let's look at what a typical 14-day cycle looks like in the real world by looking at what I do during this 14-day cycle. So I generally eat 4 meals a day. And for my first meal at breakfast time, what I'm having on a medium carb day is a spelt egg sandwich, followed or actually preceded by a protein shake. So that's giving me around 50 to 60 grams of protein just in the breakfast. Then for lunch, I like to have a bowl power soup, which gives me around 20 plus grams of protein. And I like to also have a lot of fruit during these medium carb days. For my midday snack, I have another protein shake. And then for dinner, I would have my tri-plate meal. So that's where you're having your fibrous carbs, your starchy carbs, and your protein for your medium carb days. When I come to about day 3, I like to have some vinegar water before that meal. Now, what does vinegar water do? Vinegar water sort of hacks the insulin to try and siphon that additional carbs you're having into your glycogen stores. Now, I don't need to do that for generally days 1 to 3 because my muscles are in a damaged state. All the extra carbs that I will be having, the muscles will be saying, bring them my way. But come to about maybe end of day 3, day 4, that vinegar water, maybe those muscles aren't as sore, aren't as in a damaged state as they were in the first 3 days. So what the vinegar water does, it actually helps the body to siphon that extra blood sugar into the muscles rather than the fat. Now come to your low carb days, what I'm having, similar to my medium carb days, but instead of having a egg sandwich with the spelt bread, which has got a good amount of carbs in it, I swap that for some Elite cereal. Go and check it out. ELEAT. Great source of protein, great source of fiber, very nutritious breakfast cereal. So that's what I'm having for breakfast. And then for lunch, I'm having my bowl soup again. But during these low carb days, I'm starting to cut back on the amount of fruit I have because I want to bring that carb level down. Then I'm having a vinegar water actually before the meal. Same reason I'm having it in the medium carb days, to try and siphon that extra blood glucose into my muscles. And then I'm having a protein shake again, and then again having my tri-plate meal. But now instead of having that additional amount of starchy carbs, I'll be having around a quarter of the plate of starchy carbs. And then again, that is preceded by vinegar water. Now we're going into my no carb days. So here, everything shifts up. I'm not having, which I normally have in my protein shake in the morning, I will put about 3 dates. I will be putting frozen berries. I'll be putting a banana. In my no carb day shake, I'm actually changing that all out for avocado instead of a banana. I'm having almond butter, and I'm having no dates, no carbs. So in my 14-day split, my protein shakes, I've got about 4 different types of protein shakes depending on the time of the week. Listen, not the time of the week, the phases at which I'm in during that week. So I'm having my no carb protein shake. And then for breakfast, instead of having spelt bread or an elite cereal, what I'm doing is I'm having eggs cooked in coconut oil. I'm having cheese, and I love cheese. So I love my no carb days. I'm having cheese with my eggs. I'm having avocado, and I'm having avocado mayonnaise. Delicious. My clients also are loving the no carb days. It's the days to look forward to. And then for lunch, instead of having a bowl soup, which this bowl protein pot, I'm having the bowl soup, which has got much less carbs, or I might be having a tuna salad, something with no carbs but high protein. And then for my midday snack, I'm having that no carb protein shake again. And then in the evening, a no carb meal, which may be cauliflower rice. Maybe cauliflower rice is a great substitute for rice. Dice up some cauliflowers, put it in a pan, cooked with coconut oil, delicious. And that's giving me my no carb meal with high protein, no carbs, higher fats. Throughout the day as well, I might be having cashew nuts, might be having things that are got a higher amount of fat in it, because remember, your body still needs energy to get through the day. Instead of getting that from carbs, you want to be getting that from fats. Then comes on to the infamous cheat day, the refuel days. So in these refuel days, I like to, for example, in the morning, my wife cooks up a delicious full Mediterranean breakfast. So that's large amounts of carbs for breakfast. All of this is preceded on your cheat days, on your refuel days. You're having vinegar water before each cheat meal. Now, across the 2 days, you're not having a cheat meal every meal. You're having, let's say, around 3 cheat meals. So before each cheat meal, you want to have your vinegar water. And after you finish, I always say this, cheat meals aren't cheap. You need to pay for them. And how do you pay for them? You want to be doing after your meal, around 30 to 60 minutes after your meal, you want to be doing 20 to 30 air squats, depending on how much you can actually do, and then 20 press ups. What that's going to do, you're having your vinegar water to try and siphon that extra carbs into your muscles rather than fat cells, because we don't want to get fat, we want to burn fat. And then to encourage that even more, your insulin spikes around half an hour after your meal, because you're having high carb meals. Any spike that might happen, you want that extra fuel, the glucose in the form of the blood sugar, going to your muscles instead of your fat. To encourage your body to do that, you do those 20 to 30 air squats and 20 press ups around 30 to 60 minutes after the meal. Does that make sense? Then, for lunch, I might be having fish and chips. I love fish and chips. It's my favorite meal. And this gives me the opportunity once a fortnight to have some fish and chips. I might be having some ice cream. I might be, if you look at my Instagram channel, you see how I fuel up on these cheat days. And then again, preceded by vinegar water and preceded by vinegar water and followed by air squats and press ups. I might be having a protein shake again. And then in the evening, I'll be having my tri-plate meal. And that will be preceded by vinegar water and squats again. So that's what it looks like in the real world. Super simple, no calorie counting. You get to eat all the foods that you probably typically are eating now, but you're just having them at the right time in the right way. So by following my 135 nutrition system, I was able to drop down. As you can see here, I've been tracking myself over the 3 years, 12%, if you look to the middle of the graph and then into the right-hand side of the graph, you can see I started to really drop down. I started to dial it in and I got down to 8.9% body fat. Put on muscle, dropped fat, all at the same time. So I'm always in shape. And this doesn't only work for me, it also works for my clients. So let's have a look at Justin, who joined my 135 program. And before that, he was training around 3 times a week in the gym. He had a personal trainer and he was really skeptical about how this would actually work. How can 1 day a week be better than training 3 days a week? And how can that put on muscle and drop fat all at the same time? Let's just have a listen of Justin and what he. Let's have a listen of just. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth after his 12-week program. Well, let's hear it from the horse's mouth himself, Justin telling us his review after the 12-week program.
And I have to say, it's been fantastic. I was a skeptic, an open-minded skeptic at the beginning, because I found it hard to get my head around how a 1 hour session using Bantastic was going to be more effective for weight loss and growing muscle than what I was doing before, which was 3 1 hour sessions in a gym. So I have to say, I'm really, really happy with the results that I've got using Bantastic. MDAD is a brilliant trainer. He really pushed me and got a few extra reps out of me every single week. And it's great when every week you come on, you're moving up the bands, you're increasing resistance every week, so you can see that you're growing muscle clearly and you're getting stronger. And he really dialed me in on my eating and I suppose eating within a certain window, which has allowed me and helped me to lose weight, or I shouldn't say lose weight, to drop weight, because I have, since starting the program, I have lost just shy of 3 kilos. I have dropped 3% body fat, and my clothes are really loose and baggy on me now, apart from my Bantastic shirt.
What you're seeing here isn't genetics. It isn't obsession, and it definitely isn't willpower. It's the result of aligning training stress with recovery time and fuel selection. Justin didn't lose fat by doing more cardio. He didn't get stronger by eating more all year. He trained once a week, recovered fully, and ate in a way that respected both. That's what Optimum Overload makes possible. 135 isn't about doing less for the sake of it. It's about doing the right amount, then getting out of the way so the body can adapt. If you're a busy man who wants strength, muscle, and leanness without living in the gym or the kitchen, this channel is for you. Subscribe if this way of thinking resonates. And if you want early access to what I'm building next, comment 135 below, train less, live more.